Hey everybody, it's me, Steve SCHNEE, the CD Junkie. This is another episode of That's Pop Power, where I power through a stack of CDs that are power pop or power pop adjacent. So if you love melodic rock and roll with great hooks, then pay attention. And we're going to start off with Ian McNabb, Potency. This is actually a best of. It covers his solo career, obviously post Icicle Works. And this is just a great collection of songs. Is he power pop? No, he's not, but he's great melodic rock. I mean, he's influenced by everyone from the Beatles. I mean, he's from Liverpool, to Neil Young and a lot of the rock and roll greats. And this is just a great way to catch up on his early solo career. This album right here, which is just self-titled, is just a pop masterpiece in my opinion. This version here is actually a 2 CD version that has a bonus disc. You may not be able to find that as easily, but it's very highly recommended. Everybody loves Beatle-esque music, so I'm going to present to you now just 2 of the many Spongetones albums. Both of these came out on the Black Vinyl Records label. Beat and Torn features the Beat Music release and the Torn Apart release, both on one disc, which is fantastic. Of course, Jamie Hoover, Steve Stockel, these guys are just amazing. Oh Yeah is another great one. They are both filled with wonderful hooks, great harmonies, and just a pure, honest sincerity. And you should definitely check out the Spongetones. Speaking of Beatlesque pop, have you all heard Utopia, Deface the Music? This is the album where they paid homage to the Beatles. If you like the Ruddles, the Flying Elephants, and Spongetones, then you're definitely going to want to get Deface the Music by Utopia. Friggin-tastic album, just great hooks. Todd Rundgren and the boys really knock it home with this. In fact, they produced it to sound like a 60s album, with each song sort of having slightly different production, and it's really fun. So Deface the Music by Utopia. If you also want just some great pop from Utopia, I thought I'd throw this in the stack here. This is just the self-titled album. It's the album with like Feet Don't Fail Me Now and Bad Little Actress, and this was a great pop rock album. It's not Beatlesque, but it's great because it's Utopia, and you really can't say anything bad about Todd Rundgren and Utopia, even the progressive rock stuff. Have you heard the new one from the Bye Bye Blackbirds called Boxer at Rest? I may have talked about this in a recent video, but trust me, not everybody watches my videos. So this might be your first CD Junkie or That's Pop Power video. So I may repeat myself on a couple titles here, but the Bye Bye Blackbirds, that's Bradley Scott. Also Casey Bauman from bands like Fireproof Sam and the Corner Laughers and the Agony Ants. He's part of this as well. Great melodic rock. It goes anywhere from indie rock to psychedelia to just pure pop. Just don't call them power pop. Oh my gosh, I love Translator. This is not power pop. This is wonderful, sometimes dark, post-punk guitar pop. Some of the songs may fit into the power pop category, not really that often, but melodic rock, melodic pop, just great. Of course, this is the album with Everywhere That I'm Not, and of course the song Everywhere and Sleeping Snake, some of my favorite. Robert Darlington and Steve Barton were 2 completely different types of songwriters, but they were both great and bounce off each other very well. It just adds to the Translator sound, and this is just really a fabulous album. It's called Heartbeats and Triggers and should be owned by anybody who likes guitar pop. Speaking of guitar pop, but crunchy guitar pop, I may have talked about this already, but this is the new Chris Church. It's called Backwards Compatible. It's on Spider Pop Records, and it is heavy-handed, wonderful, crunchy. If you turn it up too loud, you might get a headache, but then you'll also be lulled to sleep by the wonderful melodies and harmonies. It's just fantastic, and you really need to own that. Speaking of Spider Pop Records, I've already told you about the new Lannie Flowers Home, one of my favorite albums of 2019, tied with the Rubinoos album. But he's also got some other great stuff out there. No, Spider Pop is not a paid sponsor. In fact, I have to pay them to talk about them. But Lannie Flowers is one of America's finest singer-songwriters right now. If you don't know Spider Pop Records, just check them out because they're just chock full of great stuff. Anybody remember a band called Pickle? Neither do I. Well, Pickle put out one album, and this right here is a 3 CD set called A Complete Pickle. How can a band put out one album, but then it gets reissued as a 3 CD set? Well, if you like early Badfinger meets early 10cc and add in that winsome early 70s pop vibe to it, maybe a little bit of Splinter, and you get Fickle. Fickle Pickle's main claim to fame is the fact that Paul McCartney did not release Maybe I'm Amazed as a single off of his first album. So Fickle Pickle went in and they did a pretty straightforward cover version of Maybe I'm Amazed, and it was actually a hit in some regions. But this is, I mean, I listened to this, it's the full album. It's a bunch of unreleased stuff. It's them live in the studio. And the unreleased stuff on here, I listened to it, and it could have been off of an early Badfinger album. The one that was between No Dice and Straight Up that never came out, with I'll Be the One on it and stuff. Some of the stuff sounds like it's just absolutely amazing. Fickle, Pickle. A complete pickle. If you have the album on vinyl, you're going to want the CD, because look at how many tracks that has. Absolutely fantastic. Stiff Records was great at putting out some uncompromising bands. Dirty Looks was one of them. This album here, self-titled, released in the U.S. with a different cover, but it is just jam-packed. It's got a punky edge to it, but it's really, really wonderful power pop-ish. I don't want to call them straightforward power pop, but power pop fans will love it. That first album is just absolutely stellar, 100%. The second album, which is called Turn It Up, isn't as great, but it still has some great songs on it. In fact, that second album never came out in the US. It took me years to find it on vinyl. But this CD here, Dirty Looks, this is not the heavy metal band, as you can tell, and no, none of these members went off to form the heavy metal band. But this was a Stiff Records band. Great songs. Great 2-CD set. I believe you might be able to find these albums separately on CD. I'm not sure. You're definitely going to be able to find the first album on vinyl, and that's the one I recommend, and it is so fantastic. Brad, Rob, and Graham Elvis were the Elvis brothers, and they put out 2 great albums. Of course, there's the first album there, Moving Up, and the second album, Adventure Time, there, and they were both combined on one CD. And this is just chock full of great material. The first album was a mixture of power pop, straight ahead pop, rockabilly, roots, fantastic. Second album, which was produced by Adrian Belew, was a lot more adventurous, but just as melodic and wonderful. And both of these albums are fantastic. Almost every mixtape I made in the mid-'80s featured at least one Elvis Brothers song. And all that stuff there is just absolutely wonderful. And you should check that out any chance you get. They also reunited in the 90s, and they put out another album called Now Dig This, which was also fantastic. Lots of great songs. From power pop to rock and roll, it's just hooks galore. Definitely. And everybody knows this band. I want to throw some Jangle Pop in there because everybody loves Jangle Pop. And I will stand by both of these albums by this band, R.E.M, Murmur and Reckoning. These are both fantastic albums and should be in anybody's collection if you like eclectic, mysterious Jangle Pop. R.E.M are definitely a band you need to check out. I mean, obviously everybody knows their commercial stuff, but this is really where it starts and ends with me. Actually, I do enjoy R.E.M albums up to Life's Rich Pageant, and then after that I just like various songs, not full-length albums. Anybody know the band The Tourists, featuring Dave Stewart and Annie Lennox from the Eurythmics? This is, of course, pre-Eurythmics. Great, wonderful 60s influence pop, very Byrds influence, a little bit of Syd Barrett in there, a little bit of Kinks, Beatles, Dusty Springfield, just a fantastic. This is a greatest hits collection. And it features, obviously, their greatest hits and some album tracks as well, because they didn't have that many hits. I mean, come on. Wonderful harmonies. And Pete Coombs, the guitar player who wrote most of the material, you can say that musically he was coming from the same place that maybe Tom Petty was on the first maybe 3 Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers albums, although it sounds very different. Obviously, this is very, very British. Now, that's a collection. But, of course, Luminess Basement, which is long out of print. This is the Japanese version of it. This was their third and final album, and it's a little darker, but I love this album so much. Whenever I see this album cover, it takes me back to the time I walked home from Licorice Pizza with this in the bag, and I put the headphones on, put the needle down on the record, and it just took me off to a different place, and this is absolutely fantastic. Also available on CD, by the way. Reality Effect. This was the second album in the UK, this cover and the title. But this US version, what they did is they took songs off the first UK album and the second UK album and then created this track list. So this is actually the American track list, but it's still kind of like a best of the first 2 albums. You may not need this if you have the greatest hits one, but it's still great to own. If you can find it, pick it up. Next, we're going to head over to Scotland. Great band. Remember earlier when I was talking about this, that Beatles stuff, like Spongetones and Utopia, you know, the Ruddles, Flying Elephant, stuff like that. Well, if you want to go back to Mercy Beat, we're talking raw Mercy Beat in mono, the Kaisers. They were putting out albums, in the 90s that sounded like they were recorded in 1962 in Liverpool. And this Scottish band is just amazing. I mean, when you're listening to it, you actually feel like you're standing in the Cavern Club. Now, they have other albums as well. I don't have all of them, but I will eventually. When I do, I'll do a separate video. But there's 2 more Kaisers CDs. I think I'm missing 2 or 3 maybe. But other things I wanted to bring to your attention is there's Transatlantic Dynamite, which is Kaiser George and the High Risers, and that's a great collection there. And then finally, Twist Party, which is Low Straitjackets featuring Kaiser George. What a great collection here. It's actually Low Straitjackets with the world-famous Pontani sisters and Kaiser George, but however you want to look at it, it's great. So you should definitely check that out. Not power pop, but if you love great 60s fun twist music, a little bit of surf music, a little bit of Mercy Beat, and you're going to love this. But anyway, that's it for this episode of That's Pop Power. I appreciate you hanging out and allowing me to talk about all this great music. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and to ring that bell to get future notifications of any of these silly videos I put up. Anyway, I appreciate you hanging out. I really do. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be well. And remember me, I'm Steve SCHNEE, the CD Junkie.